Heyo, Omni Dogs and Omni Kittens. It's Omni Dog from Omni Dog's Vault and the Minister of Comics doing Crime Corner. How are you, Minister?
I'm doing great. I'm in a crime kind of mood. I was talking to Jess before the show. I watched 3 Days of the Condor today, and I'm about to watch Night of the Hunter after the show's over. So it's a big crime day for me.
I cannot wait to hear what you think of Night of the Hunter.
I'm on a good hot streak with 3 Days of the Condor. That was a great spy movie, and I loved it. So this one will be a little bit further back, even before Jess was born. So I think it was
wow.
So it is back whenever. Well, I think this movie was intentionally black and white because it could have been in color, but they decided to do black and white. I've never seen a Robert Mitchum movie before. I don't think.
I think this is a good one to start with. In my humble opinion, I just think he's a menacing looking guy, as I said before to you, and I think he plays a menacing character with very little effort. I think he is such a good actor. He is just so powerful, I think, in this movie.
Well, let me know what your favorite Robert Mitchum movies are in the comments. I'll try to get to them. I want to watch this and then Friends of Eddie Coyle. Give me any other recommendations that you have. I want to watch some movies from him.
Okay.
But we're not here to talk about movies tonight, are we, Jess?
No. We're here to talk about crime comics. We talk about crime comics because we love crime comics. And we have two that we're talking about tonight. Did you hear what Eddie Gein done?
The feel-good book of the year.
I'm sorry?
It's the feel-good book of the year. It's like a chicken soup for the soul type of book.
This is by Eric Powell and Harold Schechter. We interviewed Eric Powell. If you want to go back in our library, just a couple months ago, he was a great guest and he talked about this book. And we are also going to be reviewing a book on our iPads, or I don't know what you use, Taylor.
I use my iPad
to read. Come
on Hoopla.
Why do I have to sign in all the time? First Degree. It's a crime anthology
from Humanoids.
And it's got several stories in it. Obviously, it's an anthology. And we will be talking about it second. But I will say that I love my iPad reading digital comics.
It does go by a lot quicker, doesn't it?
And it seems brighter, and the colors seem to be more vibrant. Wow. Okay, sorry. I'm just geeking out on my iPad right now. Did you hear what Eddie Gein done is based on the true story, and this is a thoroughly researched and well done project.
Be careful what pages I show.
Yeah.
I don't want you guys to throw up.
Yeah. This, first of all, it's very graphic. And it tells the story of Eddie Gein, not America's first serial killer, but I would say he seems to be the first serial killer who worked his way into influencing American pop culture, and was the movie Psycho was loosely based on him, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre took elements from his story.
Yeah, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
Right. He was from Wisconsin, and he was a serial killer that they didn't have to try very hard to capture. I think the first thing I have to say, and I think you'll probably agree, is this is for, I would say, very mature readers. I don't know that I would give this to anybody under 16.
Or Tyler Blunt.
Oh, no way could Tyler read this. This is very true to life and very graphic. It tells the story. I didn't know the full story, so I don't want to give it away as much as talk about the impact that it had on us. First of all, as you saw with Taylor showing you the art is done in sort of black and white and gray wash, with Eric Powell doing some of the finest work that I've ever seen him do. He is just such a great artist.
It's so different than The Goon, which is impressive. It's so much more restrained, and it's. I feel like in The Goon, he kind of gets to flex his muscles and go crazy. And this one, he's very restrained, but I almost like it even better here. Even though I love his artwork in The Goon, I think this is the work of his career because it's so realistic, it's so down to earth, and it really has a certain mood that it really brings to your mind. And I think it really touches into like Psycho and how I felt when I first watched that movie. And it opens up with Alfred Hitchcock and talking about Psycho. I think one of the things I love about this book is that it touches not just upon the murders, but how it impacted our society. Because we're a part of a culture that loves true crime, that loves to talk about serial killers. We have so many serial killer TV shows, movies, books. And I think Eddie Gein's kind of one of the killers who really kicked open the door for interest in serial killers and true crime. Crimes that we can't fully understand. Because we can all understand crimes of passion. You know, you walk on your husband cheating on you, someone robs you of money and you kill them in the throes of the moment. But this is something totally different. This is killing someone for the sake of killing them. And that was something that people didn't understand back then. And we don't understand now. Why do people do this?
No, it shows his upbringing and how difficult his life was with a very difficult, stern, religious mother, kind of a weak father that would get drunk and then find his spine, but he became violent. And Eddie was bullied at school constantly, but he developed this really, I don't know how you develop it, because I would say there are many people with difficult upbringings that they can even go through drugs and alcohol and somehow they pull themselves through it. But he fully gave into it and didn't just give into the dark side of his growing up. He fed it himself. He was really consumed with the sort of tawdry periodicals that you could pick up about murders and things like that. And he would really, I mean, he leaned into his disturbing behavior. His disturbing behavior, he leaned into all the dark, disturbing parts of his psyche. He never thought anything was wrong with him. He was into I don't know. It's hard for me to say he was into it.
He would talk to people about murders, and he thought it was something that was okay to talk about. Like he would just bring up like different murders that he read about in the newspaper. He'd ask grotesque questions, and people just thought he was strange. They'd know he was psychotic. And I think you're right. Like this book does kind of ask the question, is it nature versus nurture? Like, is this something that was in him or is something that was bred in him?
To me, the book brings those two things together. It was like the worst of both worlds. He had the disturbed seed in him and the really hardcore mother, the no love, no compassion shown from his mother. I think really helped the disturbed seed flower in him. So I think it was to me, it was kind of both, that it was in his nature. And since he didn't get any nurturing, the disturbed part got nurtured. And the artwork in here shows all the graphic crimes that he did. He was influenced by the Holocaust. He was influenced by previous tabloid murders, and he was just influenced by his own creative I don't. Well, I don't want to use the word creative, but he.
He was very creative. If you
But
read this book, you'll discover
yeah,
he's creative in the most macabre ways.
yeah, and
The
it's
kind of creation
shown.
you don't want to see from people.
Right, and it's very graphically shown, and this was um nowadays you read in the paper because there's so much more coverage of things like this when you get serial killers. He was I feel like he was one of the first ones to be recognized as the quiet neighbor that everyone was surprised that he was capable of doing this, because you get interviews now, uh, some murderers cul-de-sac or whatever, and his neighbors will go, gee, he always was quiet, he kept to himself, he never bothered anybody. Meanwhile, he's got 15 bodies stacked up in his basement. And there were a lot of his neighbors interviewed on record, that were surprised at this. He was odd, but I didn't know he had this in him. And the stuff that he did, I told you as soon as I finished this book that I don't, it's, this is so true to life. This is so, this did happen, and it's just portrayed as what happened. This is not, surmising. This is not conceptual. This is not, we think this is what happened. These are facts that are drawn onto the page. These are part of history.
Yeah, my co-writer is actually a true crime writer who actually wrote a book about Eddie Gein, like an actual prose book. So this guy knows exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, except for the scenes maybe where there's scenes between him and his mother that nobody else would really know what is said, but I think they're accurately portrayed from what we know about them. But everything else, like how many people he killed, the graves he exhumed, what he did to people after they were dead, that's all true to life. And what happened to him is true. And so it's one of those, it's just the facts. This is what actually happened. And even though this book is disturbing, I never felt like it was schlocky and over the top.
No.
I never felt like they were, there's some books you can read where it's like, this is just too much. This is just, they're going for shock value here.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they were just like, hey, here's what happened. I never felt like it was schlocky.
But it's so real that, and so disturbing that I'm not sure I can reread it. I pushed through it, but I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it was such a compelling story, and such an interesting, and such an interesting scenario that built up, the tension built up through it. And then the way he acted when they caught him, I thought was one of the most interesting parts of the book, because they couldn't get a straight answer out of him.
He'd go back and forth. He would act like he was dumb, and then he'd give them a clear answer. Then he'd kind of retroactively go back on that answer.
Yeah.
And you couldn't really tell what his intelligence level was. In some moments, he seemed brilliant. Other moments, he seemed incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
So I don't think they could really tell what his intelligence level was. And you don't know if that's his own doing, of him trying to cover it up, or if he's just unintentionally doing this.
Yeah. The more we're talking about it, the more I think that I am going to keep this and reread this. At first, I was really devastated by it, and I still stand by that it physically and mentally affected me. But this is also one of the best books that I've read this year.
It's definitely be my top 10, I think, of this year. It's hard to imagine it not being there by December.
Right.
It wasn't the most enjoyable, fun read of the year, but it's a crowning achievement in Eric Powell's career.
Yeah. Yeah. We both agree on that.
So really, this is a trigger warning for people. If you're easily disturbed, don't read this book. But if you're someone who likes crime books, you like true crime stuff, maybe you watch documentaries, listen to podcasts about true crime, this is the book for you. But if you're someone who has somewhat of a weak stomach and just isn't really into dark stuff, I would have warned you not to read this book.
It's so well done that you can be disturbed by it
It's
easily.
a get under your skin type of book. It's not a
Mhm.
jump scare book. It's just so creepy, so disturbing. You really do think about it after it's over, which is a sign of a good book. Whether it
Yeah.
disturbs you, whether it makes you elated, whether it makes you laugh. Books that stick with me, I think about the day after, are my favorites.
Oh, yeah. This
I
thing.
read so many comics, and some just totally just jump out of my mind as soon as I read them, even if they're good. But this is just on a different level.
Oh yeah, this thing got its fish hooks in me and hasn't let go yet. So I mean, that's the sign of a good book, even though it's disturbing. I mean, this is what happened, and um, this is what happened, and they don't try to find out uh, the whys. They don't go into trying to find out. They just there's no analysis of it, because I don't. I think that's a separate. That's probably a completely separate subject. This is just what happened, and how it played out and how it affected America at the time and in the years following. Um, so um, take Taylor's warning seriously, and paradoxically, it's probably going to be in both of our top tens at the end of the year.
And I'm continually impressed with Albatross Funny Books' quality of book. It's an independent company that Eric runs with some other people. And this isn't a big two, this isn't an Image, but these books are really quality. I have his Goon Omnis. Those are really nice. I think, Jess, you have his Hillbilly Trades. He makes some really good books. Not just what's inside, but also the presentation as well.
Yeah, and they're not expensive. They're very affordable for the quality.
I agree.
You're really getting a good deal.
Yeah, I think Albatross has a really bright future ahead of it as a company.
Yeah. We have the next story we both have digitally is the I believe French iPad. If you got okay, it did it. Is the French anthology First Degree, a crime anthology?
Is it French or is it just different Euro artists?
I
couldn't tell because the first one's by David Walker, who's American, and Michael Lark, who's American. I guess I thought it was a mixture of different European artists.
Okay,
maybe I'm incorrect though.
I felt like it was based on the Polar Festival in Cognac. They talked about that a lot. That it was an offshoot of that.
I could be wrong. I know there was a lot of French artists and writers because there was a lot of it set in Paris or in France. So I could be wrong.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter. It's a bunch of different crime stories from overseas, basically.
Right. And you mentioned the first story by David Walker, with great illustration by Michael Lark, and of course everybody's favorite colorist Dave Stewart. And it's called Encounter, and it seemed when you read the rest of the stories, to me, this first story really seemed out of place and kind of in an odd placement as the very first story. The other stories, as usual, it's a mixed bag. This is just my review of it. Taylor will give you his thoughts. There were some really good stories. There were some very good stories. There was only a couple I felt that were just sort of medium. I felt like almost all of them were worth reading, but they were your typical. They were more crime stories that had a little bit of a twist in them. With only 9-10 pages to tell a story, I felt that a lot of the stories did a good job of drawing you in quickly and getting you invested. You don't get very much time to get invested in the characters, but almost all of the stories that I really cared for had some kind of twist in them that happened organically enough, because it wouldn't be a long story. It would just be, a little bit of a person's story of their life. And I felt there were enough twists in the crime stories in this anthology to make it to make those stories really interesting to me. And the encounter one, the very first one, there's no doubt there's a crime done. It's not your typical crime that you would see. You'll understand it when you read the first book about who gets the crime committed against them. But it just seemed like sort of an odd placement to me, and it didn't have the sort of surreal twist that some of the other stories had.
It was more of a statement than it was a story.
Yeah, right. And so as a statement, it made its point. I'm not sure it belongs in this anthology.
Especially since it was written and drawn by an American duo. So that was kind of also strange that it started off and the rest were French, or we're not sure if they were all French, but European artists.
Right.
I guess that part's also a little bit strange.
It's powerful. It makes an impact. It makes its statement, and I understand it. It was well done, but it did seem sort of odd to me that it was the first story in this, and it didn't follow. It felt out of step with the other stories. But as far as I'm concerned, I found this enjoyable enough that I can recommend it. I will say that it's a typical anthology, but there are enough good stories in it that make it worth reading. Because I enjoyed the twists of the really well-written stories. And there are enough well-written stories for me in this anthology to make it worth a read.
I'll keep my review short. I'm glad I didn't buy this book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 10.
Oh, you didn't like it at all?
I really didn't like it, to be honest. I'm just not a huge fan of anthologies. If I'm going to like an anthology, it has to really grip me. And none of these stories really grip me at all.
Okay.
I enjoyed maybe one or two of them out of like 15. I think it was that many, like 14, 13, like 12 to 15 stories.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. I'm not trying to bash any artists from different countries or writers from different countries. I just didn't connect with this book at all. And I'm very glad I read it on Hoopla.
Well, I also read it on Hoopla. So
I'm guessing you're not planning on buying it. So, or are you?
No.
Yeah. So you liked it, but you didn't like enough to go out and buy it and have it later.
Right. I liked it enough to recommend that people read it. I'm not saying you need to buy it, but I think people should read it.
It was a skip for me.
Okay. Well, that's fair. That's why there's two of us on this show.
Do you ever just have books you're reading? You're just like, oh, come on, I want to get through this. Like, I just want this to be over. And you read it really quick. There's some books you read really quick because you're enthralled, and some you read really quick because you want to be done. And that's how I felt with this book.
Okay, wow. We have two completely different views on it. Okay.
Matador Part 2.
No, don't go there. That is so not fair. This book has some good stories.
You got rid of that book because of me.
I just sold it. Yeah.
If it wasn't for me, that book would be a key staple of your collection.
It would not be a key staple.
I'd
put it next to my Avengers by Hickman books.
I don't judge you for liking this book. I'm not like saying you're crazy for liking this book. It just wasn't for me. Maybe it wasn't to my taste. Anthologies just aren't usually for me. I like anthologies that have less stories and more page time.
Yeah.
Like anthologies that have like 4 or 5 stories, not 15. It's really hard to grab someone in 9 pages.
I agree with hard.
And so it's easier to grab some, like even like short story books. I'd rather read like a book of novellas that are about 100 pages each than like 10-page short stories. It's just really hard to care about the characters and to really get a fascinating story, in my opinion.
Okay. I totally think it's fair. That's why there's two of us. We don't disagree. We just have two different opinions.
Yeah.
And that is what Crime Corner is about. Two different opinions.
So now the next 10 minutes, Jess and I are going to personally attack each other for disagreeing. And we're going to...
How dare you not like this book? No, I would never die on the hill of that book. I'm just saying it's good to read. I'm not saying anything other than that.
All of these for these shows, we always want to say, here are our opinions. Your opinion's just as valid as mine.
Right.
We never want anybody to feel bad for liking something or disliking something.
Right. Everybody's opinion is valid. You can like whatever you like, read whatever you like.
Unless your opinion is that you want to kill people like Eddie Gein, that opinion is not valid.
I don't know that sounds more like a not an opinion, more like a life statement. more like a more like a mission statement in life. Yeah. I want to kill people. Yeah, no, that book is the clear winner here. Do
you remember the serial killer that was stalking the streets of New York in Seinfeld?
No.
The Lopper.
Now I do. The Lopper.
He lopped people's heads off. That show's coming to Netflix in a couple weeks.
Yay.
So I'm excited to rewatch it for the bajillionth time. Because it was off Hulu, and I haven't been able to watch it at all for like 3 months. And that's
3 months. How have you lived?
I've been watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia instead.
I can tell. It's definitely affected you.
Has it?
Show. I need to start watching it.
It's hilarious. Me and Tyler both text each other memes and gifs from it all the time.
And is he a big fan of that show?
He's not as big of it as I am, but he does love the show.
Okay, I need to start watching it. Okay, well, that was our crime corner. We crimed it up as we possibly could.
In less than 30 minutes. That's pretty good for us, Jess.
That's right. No tangents. We talked, well, not too many tangents. We talked right about crime.
We did 2 tangents, one at the beginning and one at the end. That's pretty good for us.
That is pretty good for us. So thank you for watching. Please leave a like. Please, you can subscribe to the channel. Feel free to leave a comment and follow the Minister of Comics on Instagram at
Minister of Comics.
There you go. He's got quite a following, and he's got a way big following, a bigger following than I do. You can follow me on Instagram on my teeny account, omnidogs_vault. Although I did have a reel recently that just did pretty well. So I'm pretty happy about that with my spinner rack. So everybody, thank you for watching, and we will talk to you as soon as we read some more crime comics. Thanks for watching.